Hey, Isaac, thanks so much for sitting down with us today and answering some questions.
Yeah, no problem.
First, I wanted to hear about your history of leading environmental action in your community. Can you tell us how you got involved and how your experience has grown over time?
Yeah, so ever since I was a little kid, I was born and raised on a small organic farm, and that kind of gave me a better appreciation for the environment. In high school, I started branching out and getting involved. And so my first experience was I was an intern for the Santa Cruz Coastal Watershed Council when I was a freshman. And so in that job, I was managing teams of volunteers to do coastal restoration and river projects and just cleaning up the environment in general.
Mhm.
And then from there, I also volunteered for the Monterey Bay Trout and Salmon Project, which is a local organization that's focusing on restoring salmon populations, and also Save Our Shores, which does beach cleanups. And then more seriously, I took a course that allowed me to do an environmental monitoring project over the past 2 years. I was involved in that, and for that, I had my own research project with two of my peers, and we were doing a project on methods to remove invasive French broom, and so we just finished that actually. And then I also participated in the on a SU student advisory board, and this year I wrote a paper for um, talking about recycling efficiency and how the United States can improve its recycling efficiency in recent years, especially now that China's not buying our recycling. And yeah, that's about it.
That's awesome. It seems like you've had a variety of experiences.
Yeah, it's awesome.
Cool. And especially as the effects of climate change are kind of escalating, I know that the people that are going to feel the brunts of those impacts or the people that have to deal with them are you guys, like you and your peers in the younger generation.
Yeah, definitely. That's, I think, a really big part of my inspiration for doing environmental work.
Yeah, I'd love to hear more about why this issue is so important to you.
Well, especially growing up in the Santa Cruz Mountains, the environment is really important to everyone who grows up here because we've got the river and the forest and the ocean all really close by. And I think everyone is joined in the fact that they want to preserve that for as long as we can because right now it's still pretty pristine, but there are people who litter and don't do their part to take care of it. And that's the biggest inspiration for me and most of my peers who work um, in environmental projects.
That's so cool. Yeah, now that you have been sort of hands-on and you've gotten this experience, what are some of the biggest lessons that you've learned through your environmental work? Like, has anything especially inspired you or surprised you?
Um, well, I think the biggest lesson I've learned is that getting environmental projects started and getting change is much harder than anyone anticipates. And getting everyone on board to help with environmental projects and to actually fulfill them is really difficult because the general public, as well as education systems, they have a hard time adapting to it, and it's a big problem. And so I understand why it might be difficult um, for everything to get moving. But that is definitely the biggest lessons I've learned is that it takes perseverance to keep these things going. And yeah, it's really difficult, but it's important.
Totally. And like you mentioned, schools are a really big venue for change like that. So, what
Absolutely.
role do you think education plays in actually shaping young people to become leaders in like climate and social issues?
Well, I think that in every teaching subject, there's room for environmental literacy. And I think that it's important for teachers to take on an inspirational role in projecting some hope and the importance of getting involved. Um, and as well as promoting ways to get involved in the community. Because I've had some teachers that have been really inspirational in the fact that they know of these volunteer organizations that you can get involved in to help the environment. And I think that was helpful in kickstarting my environmental career as well as a lot of my peers.
Mhm. Yeah, so it seems like sharing resources and giving a little bit of guidance is like a big role for adults to help organize some of these events and to get kids
Absolutely.
mobilized.
Yeah.
Do you have any other advice that you would give adults based on your own environmental leadership experiences?
Yeah, I would say giving out information and giving resources to the youth is the best way, because I think the majority of youth are interested in a clean environment in the future, and they want to be able to sustain our Earth for future generations and our generation. But they definitely need the help of adults because they're the ones that can give them the resources and give them the voice um, to talk about these issues, as well as create their own projects and create their own movements towards saving the environment.
Yeah. And like you said, I think young people have to kind of adapt to the new era and the society that we live in with all of its shifting demographics to figure out what works. And
Yeah,
as we know, transitioning to a more sustainable society means being inclusive. Like low income
absolutely.
folks and people of color definitely need to be thought of when we're creating this new, more sustainable society.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I would say that getting low income, getting education towards renewable energy and the future of solar jobs for low income communities is extremely important in making sure that everyone is included in helping the environment, as well as making sure that equality is a forefront for this nation. In order to actually do something about the environment, we need everyone on board. And I think first getting equality for everyone is the biggest step.
Yeah. What do you think are some of the other methods that the environmental movement could use to become more equitable?
Well, I think first joining hands with those who in our nation who feel that they're not being treated with equality and that they're being discriminated in some sense, and yeah, because I think that both movements are equally important, but I think the first step is making sure that everyone feels like they have a voice